Hello, this is Kristan Weisdack, CEO and founder of BehaviorWorx of Southwestern PA, and thank you for joining us for another Work Through It Wednesday. This week, we're going to be talking about sharing, trading, and turn taking. And this is something that's come up recently in early intervention, and it comes up with a lot of the kids that we work with in early intervention. And when they get to that school age, that 3 to 5 range as well. It's a skill that they need to have, obviously, to be ready to be successful in those environments for school and later on in life. So it's a good skill. The earlier that we teach this, the better, because when a behavior is reinforced a long time, like a child is allowed to get their way for a long time, it's harder to break that behavior. So if you can start teaching that skill, even at like a year and a half old, 2 years of age, that's a really great skill to have. So what we're going to always start out doing in these videos is filling out that 4-quadrant sheet that you have in the ABC chart. So what I want you to do is, if you don't already have that printable, you can get it by signing up for our email list and go ahead and print that out. And then you can follow along week by week just so you have it. So we're going to start by filling out that 4-quadrant sheet. So what you're going to put there in the attention quadrant, you're going to write just a little note that says, no attention was being given. And then in the escape avoidance quadrant, you're going to write, a demand was presented. And then gain tangible is pretty self-explanatory. That child or that adult you're working with, whatever their age, they were trying to get an item, whether it's a toy, it's a food, something they were trying to get from someone else. And then self-stimulatory, they were engaging in these behaviors to help regulate their body. Too much or too little energy, some sensory issues were happening. So we're going to write that on the front as well. Now, everything that you wrote, I want you to put a circle around. So you're going to circle no attention. You're going to circle demand was presented, gain tangible, and then you're going to circle too much or too little energy. And then everything at the bottom of that 4-quadrant sheet, the food, oxygen, water, sleep, activity, pain, and temperature, circle that as well. And these are all really great to have these 2 sheets together, because everything that you've just circled helps you understand what the antecedent is. And so now moving on to that ABC chart. At the top of that ABC chart, you're always going to want to fill out what's happening now. Before you intervene, what does that behavior look like? The antecedent is what happened before the behavior. Then you write the behavior itself that you want to change, and then, of course, the consequence. So when we're talking about trading, sharing, and turn taking, so the kiddo that I was working with is having trouble sharing with her cousins that live in the household. So what we did is we worked on understanding what was the antecedent. Well, another child took the toy. So that would be put in the antecedent column. Another child took a toy from the child we were working with. The behavior in this situation was that the child I was working with was hitting and biting. And then the consequence that currently is happening is that child that I was working with got the toy back from the cousin that they were hitting and biting. So write that just as it is up at the top. Now, at the bottom, you're going to write the behavior as you'd like to see it happen. So in the antecedent column, perhaps that same thing still happens. Another child takes a toy from the child you're working with, because that's still going to continue to happen when you're not there, whether they're in the home setting or in a daycare setting, or wherever they might be when they're going to school. We have other people take things from us all the time. So move the same thing down to the antecedent column, that another child took a toy from the child we're working with. Now the behavior, we want to change the behavior from hitting and biting, right? We don't want them to continue to do that. We want them to understand what other skills can they use that are age appropriate, that are socially appropriate, that really show them what a healthy relationship looks like socially with another peer. So perhaps the first step that we would take here, the first step that I take, is trading. Whenever you're trading, you're not leaving that kiddo empty-handed. You're showing them that they're still going to have something. Now they may have to wait, right, to get that other desired toy back when you're trading, but they're not left empty-handed. So trading is always a good first step to sharing. And so the next step when you do work on sharing, you are leaving them empty-handed. What I like to start doing is saying your turn, my turn. And so perhaps when I tell the child they're playing with it, and I'll say, my turn, and I will take that toy and I'll play with it just maybe for 5 or 10 seconds. Now, obviously, they're going to be grabbing, they're going to be reaching, and I just play with it for 5 or 10 seconds, and then I give it right back to them. Your turn. And then over time, we make that 5 or 10 seconds a little bit longer for each interaction. So maybe the next time that they get it, it'll be 12 or 15 seconds, and I'll take it for 12 or 15 seconds. The beautiful thing about this is when you give that child that time to wait, they have options, right? They can now decide what they can do while they're waiting, what they can say while they're waiting. They can choose other toys, right? You give them that space and time for learning to happen, for problem solving. Because if they're just always getting their needs met by crying and biting and hitting, that's what they're always going to use. And you're not really giving them time to build that skill set for age appropriate behaviors. So what you're going to write in that behavior column is perhaps thinking about what you've already been working on. Do we want to start with trading? Do we need to start with trading? Or can we work on sharing with that child? Or do we want them to use their words to say, my turn? And so we also build into that a little bit of that into the session we were working with today with my kiddo, because she is verbal. And then the consequence is to gain tangible, and they do get attention, but now they're getting it for that age appropriate, that socially appropriate behavior of either trading or waiting or turn taking or using their words to get that item back. So this is a great understanding, again, covering how we can really build that skill set for waiting and turn taking for those young kiddos. So with that said, next week we are going to cover some sensory issues. We had somebody submit some information to us, and what they said is that they're an early intervention OT, and they have several 2-year-olds that are constantly holding items in their hands, tapping them together and mouthing them. And so they're already working on some reflex integration, some brushing, some sensory input, oral inputs, and texture play, but nothing is really overriding that. And there's some other things going on with low tone with that kiddo. They seldom just sit. They're always on the go. They're laying or propping themselves. They love deep pressure and inputs, but they're aversive to texture play. So what we're going to be doing next Wednesday is addressing that. And I'm going to have Mandy Keckler. She's a fantastic OT, an occupational therapist that I co-train with when we have trainings for other counties and school districts, and we're working with foster agencies, but she co-trains with me, and she specializes in something called MNRI. She's a core therapist in training for musculoskeletal neurosensory motor reflex integration. So she and I are going to collaborate here, and hopefully we'll be able to answer that question. Now, if you have any other questions that you're working through as a daycare teacher, as a daycare administrator, as a school teacher, as an early intervention therapist, you can also submit your questions to us on Work Through It Wednesday. Just send them via email to behaviorworxpa@gmail.com, and that's behaviorworxpa@gmail.com. And we hope to see you here next Wednesday at 7 p.m. We'll try to be live. We'll see what happens. But we will help answer any questions that you may have. And we look forward to seeing you again. Take care.